In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Hey, how are you doing? My name is Mara, and welcome to my channel.
Hello! Alright, so this is a bit of an odd video. I'm not quite sure what to make of it yet, and I've watched it like 5 times. Every time I watch it, I kind of grasp onto her point and then it slips away. But it seems like there's something kind of novel and interesting here. So maybe the best way is just to make the video, go through it bit by bit, and see if that clarifies things. Also, I'm a sucker for atheists and proof of God in the title, and this one has both. It's called Atheists Can't Explain This. Genesis 1:1 proves God exists. Which is a pretty obscure Bible verse, okay? Not a lot of people have heard of this one. So in case you're not aware, that's the one that goes, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth," which doesn't seem to prove the existence of God so much as assume it. So I'm skeptical going into this, to say the least.
And today we are going to talk about the beginning. We're going to talk about the Genesis. I'm going to try to disprove all those theories that people have created, which have no point, actually. They are all useless and pointless. The Big Bang, the existence of the world just simply by chance.
Okay, that's not what the Big Bang is. The Big Bang does not posit that the world originated just by chance. It doesn't really say anything about the why or the how of the origin, which is of course why theists love the Big Bang. At least a lot of them do, because it's so compatible with their beliefs. It's also compatible with ideas that are not their ideas, and that's because these ideas are not really applicable to the basic idea of the Big Bang. If people say, was it God, was it chance, was it this, was it that, that's just not relevant to whether space-time expands from an origin. Now that I think about it though, from the way you phrased that, I'm not sure if you're actually trying to say that the Big Bang is the idea that the universe originated by chance. You said the Big Bang, and then it seemed like there was maybe a comma in there, the existence of the world completely by chance. What's the right way for me to take that? What am I supposed to take that as referring to, if anything? Is the world being used in the big sense of just an alternative to everything? Nature, the universe? Or does it mean literally the planet? Or life on the planet? I guess how I respond to that would depend on knowing what you mean by it, but I don't know that yet. So for now, there's no point. It is interesting, though, how you immediately write these things off as useless and pointless. The Big Bang at the very least. I wonder if you actually have enough insight or understanding to even come close to actually making that determination accurately, but I guess we'll find out. Anyway, I don't want to waste too much time here at the start. Go ahead.
You cannot prove that because it does not work. It does not exist.
The Big Bang? I mean, okay, there's pretty good evidence for it, but whatever. I'm more than happy to go with it's a Big Bangless eternal universe if you really want to.
It's kind of like a theory. It's just simply a theory, yeah, so...
Excuse me?
It's just simply a theory, yeah, so...
What? One more time.
Yeah, so...
I have to be mishearing you, but if I'm not, no you.
Theory, fact is a fact.
Okay, I think I understand what you're trying to get at with it's just a theory, which is the same thing everyone else means when they say it's just a theory, which is based on a complete misunderstanding of the word theory. It's this part, though, that confuses me. Theory, fact, it's a fact. What are you proposing is the relationship between the theory and the fact? Because there is one, but after that it's just a theory thing, I'm not convinced that you know what it is.
And therefore, just simply by the first verse, you can just simply prove everything how it all created, how everything was created.
Yeah. Open your Bible, atheists. Look, it says right there. In the beginning, God created. Freaking owned. You never saw that one coming. I'm saying that as a joke. I don't know if that's the argument we're going with here. I really hope it's not. I hope there's at least something more to it than that, especially considering this video's 9 minutes long.
So yeah, let's go and read the Genesis 1 verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the second verse...
Well, hold on now. You said in the title, the description, and the video that you're gonna prove God exists with Genesis 1:1. Not Genesis 1:1 through 2. 1:1. I'm already disappointed.
And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Yeah?
Yep, I'd say that's about what that says.
So, let's look at verse 1.
Yeah, let's do that instead. I don't know why we looked at verse 2.
So, God is the God of order. We cannot say that God created chaos, or chaos created an order.
God did not create chaos. Okay, but he willed it to be, though, right? It didn't just emerge against his will. The entirety of creation is his will, surely. That's the bare minimum. I'm not going to get into free will arguments and stuff right now, but at least God planned for chaos, allows it to be, set things up in a way that it would be, and he knew it, and doesn't stop it. To say he didn't create it at that point is kind of splitting hairs, but okay. Anyway, I'm sure we'll come back to this one. The other part was, chaos cannot create order. Okay, well, I'm not sure exactly which definition of chaos you're intending there. There are several different ways that word is used, and people confuse them all together. Now, if you're talking about the initial condition at the origin of the Big Bang, that can't be chaotic definitionally, because chaos is about systems changing in time. Time being part of what's actually originating at that point. So there is no chaos in any scientific sense. Another way people use the word chaos is in reference to entropy, which is incredibly wrong, totally inappropriate, but incredibly common too. So if you mean something like that, well, entropy decreases back through time to the point of exceedingly low entropy at the origin. So if that incorrect sense is what's meant, then it's also not that either. That also goes for the incorrect sense of complexity. The initial state would have extremely low complexity. Another way people use it is just to mean randomness. Again, totally incorrect. But regardless, say you have an infinite field where particles are just popping in and out of existence totally randomly all the time. Within that, you're going to get arrangements of particles that will presumably meet your definition of order. At least assuming that you think any order is possible in the material world and you don't just think material reality is chaos or something. But again, just assuming I'm close to the mark here, I think it's safe to say that if it's truly infinite, then there will always be local areas which meet the definition of orderly. So there are 4 different ways people tend to use the word chaos, most of which, strictly speaking, are incorrect. But it's good to try to cover the bases here as best we can, right? And none of those apply to the initial conditions of the universe. So I don't understand the point of bringing up the word.
Yeah, or chaos created an order, which makes no sense. Which people are actually, this idea people are pushing, it makes no sense.
Who is pushing that idea? Are we still talking in the context of the Big Bang? I think we are, in which case that's not a thing then. So you're responding to something that nobody's saying.
So this verse means in the beginning of what? Of time.
Sure, I mean, it could also just refer to the flat earth and the dome and the sky ocean, but yeah, fine. The time thing is a valid enough interpretation. I can go with it.
So the first thing that God has created, not light, but the time. So God created in the beginning the time, space, and matter. Those are 3 things God created in the beginning.
Sounds fine. I don't have a problem with that. I just appreciate the clarity. Thank you. I really do hope that we get some clarity on chaos. That's the thing I'm really curious about here. The time, space, and matter stuff is not nearly as confusing.
And without time, he could not start. It's like a framework, you know? So you create like a framework, something that you can work with. Yeah, and that time, you created time, you can now create everything else.
Okay, I was okay with interpreting in the beginning as in the beginning of time, because it's as valid of a thing to be beginning in that statement as anything else. But now I think you're into the territory of over-interpreting things. You're saying a lot about this that is not specifically stated or implied. But do I really care? Well, no. This is standard Christian behavior. This is a favorite pastime. As long as I know what you think, I really don't care that much what the verse itself says. Your argument is going to be based on your beliefs, so that's what I need to know about. As far as I'm concerned, really we could take the book and toss it in the garbage can, because we don't need it for this. Although you say Genesis 1:1 proves this and that, the reality is what you mean is your understanding of it has some kind of implication to it that's supposed to prove something. And to discuss that, I really don't need to talk about how close your beliefs actually are to the text of the book.
After, I just want to say that I was inspired by the Basil the Great. I was reading his commentary on this topic, and I was reading other commentaries, and I came to the conclusion that this is something that we really need to talk about because this is a really important topic.
Oh, well, in that case, let's talk about it. Twist my rubber arm.
Just simply by the verse 1, this confirms that the universe was not created by chance.
Thanks, Basil the Great. Never would have thought of that one without your help. Genesis 1:1 says the universe wasn't created by chance. It was created by God. It's genius. Nobody's ever noticed this before. This is highly important stuff. But I feel like you might be having some difficulty with the word confirm. how does this confirm anything about the origin of the universe? The title, again, says that Genesis 1:1 proves that God exists. Is all you mean just that it says God exists and did stuff? It doesn't exactly confirm it, at least to anyone who doesn't already believe the Bible's true. To us, it just says it, and I could already see that it says it. I've seen it before. I don't really need you for that part.
It's impossible.
It's impossible that the universe was created by chance, because Genesis 1:1 says it was actually God did it. Now look, I'm not arguing that the universe was created by chance, but I'm not going to accept that this is a reason to think it's impossible that it was. There may be other reasons, but this is not one of them. Again, obviously a Christian's going to disagree on that, but I'm not one. Again, referring to the title, atheists can't explain this. Well, if this is based on this, then it doesn't exactly seem challenging.
Therefore, the God in the beginning is inherently the God of order.
Wait, it couldn't have been created by chance. That's impossible. Therefore, the God in the beginning is inherently the God of order. Wait, is that implicitly a definition of chaos? It seems like you're using the words chance and chaos to refer to the same thing. So randomness, which as I said is a totally incorrect use of the word chaos, but I don't mind as long as I know what you mean, because what I want to talk about is whatever you mean. Okay, so Genesis 1:1 supposedly says the universe wasn't created by chance. I don't know, maybe it was. Maybe God just flails around doing infinite random things, and this is one of the things he did. Regardless, of course, the fact that it says God did something doesn't mean it actually was God that did it. So the fact that it's written here doesn't actually discount any alternatives. And this also in no way says anything about God being a God of order. Now, I understand you're not saying it's literally written there. That's why you said therefore. You said, therefore, the God in the beginning is inherently the God of order. Okay, but what got us to the therefore? Because I don't think anything did. Did I miss some kind of chain of reasoning that got us to that? Because I don't think there was one. Basically, all we've discussed so far is that the beginning means the beginning of time. And a little extra cheeky claim that I'm willing to accept, that God was the one who started time, or created time. Okay, well then maybe we could say God is inherently a God that begins time, but what about this implies that he's a God of order, inherently or otherwise? You're making a really broad statement based on this one action, and I'm really struggling to see the justification for that, although the therefore implies that it probably should be there for me to see, which it doesn't seem to be.
However, the order had to be established on earth, yeah? So we can see that in the verse 2.
Oh, we're going back to verse 2 again. I disapprove. This is not the format. But in any case, the order had to be established on earth. So God created the heavens and the earth. God, who is inherently the God of order, and somehow the earth that he created was not in a state of order by default. We have to wait until verse 2 for it to be put into a state of order. So presumably it was in a state of chaos. Well, if God creates things and they're by default in a state of chaos, why would I think he's a God of order? It sounds like the opposite.
And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters.
So is that what chaos is? Formless and void? Or is chaos chance? Or is it both? Or is this disordered earth not chaotic, it's just not ordered, and therefore chaos and order aren't opposites? In which case the non-chaotic God would not necessarily be the God of order. What am I supposed to be understanding about this? This is word spaghetti.
God has not finished yet. God could create everything simultaneously. God could do this.
Okay, you put an explanation on the screen, and I think this is kind of helpful. It says in Hebrew, the words are tohu vabohu, meaning something like formless emptiness or unshaped potential. In the Greek Septuagint, used by the Orthodox Church, it says, the earth was invisible and unfinished. That doesn't describe active chaos, so it's not chaos. Rather, it means the absence of structure or form. Okay, and is structure or form order? Because you said that the order of God had to be established on earth, which I can only assume refers to establishing this structure and form. In which case, structure and form are order, but their lack is not chaos. So order and chaos are not opposites. The lack of order is not the presence of chaos. The God who doesn't do things chaotically is not necessarily the God of order, because these two concepts are not on the same spectrum. In which case, what are we talking about? This clarification doesn't clarify anything, really. It just raises more questions.
But God decided to lead us as by hand, through all the process. So God created the structure, and that's the order.
Right, the structure is the order. By increasing the structure, simultaneously or gradually, he increases the order. But the lack of structure is not chaos. Chaos is not the lack of order then, so what is chaos? You were contrasting it with order before. You said God is the God of order, so God can't create chaos and chaos can't create order. But now it seems that these are not opposed concepts. Am I having a stroke? Why am I not understanding this? I don't smell burnt toast yet. Might as well just power on through until I do. The burnt toast thing is a myth. Shut up.
The Greeks, though, Basil the Great pointed out that the Greeks, the philosophers, they implied that there was no order to begin with, so that means the creation itself had no accurate steps because the order, structure, organization, time, but there is no one who created. This is so interesting that...
What's interesting? You have to finish telling me what's interesting first. It seemed like you were about to explain something, and then you stopped in the middle of the sentence and said how interesting it is. And yes, I see the stuff on the screen about everything coming into being by chance and atoms, and you're taking that as referring to a lack of order, so okay, order refers to non-chance events, so chaos refers to chance events, except that chaos and order are not opposites, but chance and non-chance are, so chance is not chaos, but it seemed like chance was chaos. That seemed like how you were using it for a while there. And could we just define some terms and then use them consistently? Oh, there's that burnt toast. It's not very strong, though. Let's keep going.
People are contradicting themselves, and they cannot even see that.
Yeah, I'm getting that impression that at least somebody's doing that.
There is no one who created time then. Who created time if there is no God?
If there is no one who created time, who created time? And then at the end of the sentence, you also tack on if there is no God, which is redundant if there's already no one. Well, I guess if you define it as there being no who, then there's no who. Who else would there be? The someone who's not someone? It's fine. I'm good with there not being a who. Don't worry. I'm not going to get upset at being cornered in the there's no who corner. I've pretty much already built a house in that corner. Not too worried about staying.
If everything was given up to chance, if everything was just simply random, how could that moment of chance appear without time? So someone had to create time.
The weird cuts aren't mine, by the way, they're hers, in case you thought I was cutting her off at the end of sentences. But anyway, how could the moment of chance happen without time? Well, the same way the moment of creation happens without time. The same way God's choices, which for everything else seem to be things in time, of time, happen outside of time. God's outside of time. Okay, quantum chance thingamajiggy is outside of time. Time doesn't apply at the quantum level. Time is an illusion created by entropy, or it's a dimension of space-time and has no applicability outside that context. Take your pick of those, pick all of them, pick a different one, I don't care. There, done. I can just say things too, okay? You can make excuses for why it works for your idea, and I can make excuses for why it works for this other idea that is not my idea. You set up all these little parameters, these little assumptions and limitations about each situation. You define what you think is possible in this or that situation, and then you seem to sort of just decide that's an incontrovertible fact because you assumed it. Well, you haven't convinced me to accept your assumptions. To me, they seem completely arbitrary, so I don't see them as applicable. I'm more than willing to entertain hypotheticals, like if you said, if God was the only thing that could be outside of time and there were no other possibilities, and if he could take actions without them being in time, but nothing else ever could, then what would it be like? Okay, fine, I'll talk all day about what it would be like, but at some point we're going to come back to whether I actually think that that is what it has to be like, and I don't. So we can while away a whole afternoon sitting on the porch passing around the wacky tobacco talking about this, but in the morning we're still going to be on the opposite sides of this issue because you didn't actually establish anything. You just expect that I'll share the same incredulities that you have. And to be clear, I don't mind that you have them. If you're incredulous about it, that's fine, but that doesn't make you right. And these over 1600-year-old arguments, the ones you're basing this on, are based on a view of the world that really has very little in common with how I see the world. They're based on a view of the world wherein everything is very much as it looks and seems intuitively. And that is not at all how I think the world really is. But I understand science-y things are useless and pointless, I get it. My point is just you have an ancient view of the world being pitted against a different ancient view of the world, and you're portraying it as if these are the only two options. And maybe it seemed like that in Basil's time, but we're not in Basil's time.
If someone has to establish the order for those atoms, molecules, for all those elements to work together, yeah?
No. That's what the proving God part is supposed to be. But you're just saying that's how it is and how it has to be. Well, great. Yes, I know. You're a Christian. Wonderful. There was never really any confusion on that point.
Because all those atoms All those elements cannot exist in chaos. They cannot work together in chaos.
I still don't even know what that is. What do you think that is? Specifically, what is chaos? And why can't atoms do things in it? You're making all these claims about what can and can't happen in it without even defining what it is, other than possibly maybe chance? In which case, I don't know why physical things couldn't happen by chance. But yeah, you're making all these claims about what can't happen in this realm of chaos and what this chaos can't do and so on, as if you're trying to define it by negative extension, which seems like an impossible infinite task, instead of just giving me a brief, concise, intentional definition, so I can know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so there's supposed to be an order. Who established that order?
God, I guess. This all seems like fiction anyway at this point. Who cares?
Time allows sequence, movement, and decay. Without time, there is no before and after, no process, and therefore no chaos.
Okay, so chaos is a timey thing. A big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, as they say. Well, at least we've established that, I guess.
Imagining a painting before the canvas exists. You cannot have messy painting strokes if there is no canvas. Yeah.
So chaos is like the strokes on the canvas, and the canvas is time. So is everything that happens chaos? Or is it only certain types of things that happen? How can I tell the difference between a chaos thing that happens and a normal thing that happens, if there's any distinction at all?
So no space, no surface. Likewise, chaos needs time and space to manifest.
Okay, so it's not just something that happens in time, it also needs space. Okay, but what is it?
I would add that chaos itself had no place to exist because there is only God and his perfect order. That means there was no chaos and at some point of creation. And we all know what is the point of creation. The chaos has appeared. And let's look closely. So in the Bible, the first chaos which appeared...
Are we about to get an example? That'd be really, really helpful. Maybe I can sort of guess from that at least kind of what category of event we're talking about here.
Something that went... that contradicted the will of God, something that contradicted the order.
Okay, so chaos does contradict the will of God, except God is literally God. God has total control over everything. And this is all part of his grand plan, going to his final solution. Maybe that's not the right word. Even the concept of contradicting the will of God is pretty confusing, frankly, but... Okay, chaos is something that contradicts the will of God, and it seems to possibly be synonymous with chance, in which case chance occurrences are events that contradict the will of God. That's the definition of chance. Nah, that doesn't sound right. I gotta let you explain this.
So what happened, actually?
I'm on the edge of my feet. Please, tell me.
How the chaos was created, because we need to understand that, yeah, God is there, but there's also corruption of the world, there's also sin, that we have fallen, and we're the chaos.
I can't decide if you just said we're the chaos or where the chaos. And depending on which one of those you meant, it's going to radically change how I respond to that.
In the moment that God gave us a choice to have a free will, that means that if you have a free will, that means you are able to create.
Okay, sure, I guess that's fine.
Well, look at the example of AI that we have created.
This isn't really what I need examples for. I can think of my own examples for things that humans make. You're giving me examples to help explain things I already know and that are incredibly obvious, and you're giving me no examples for things that are incredibly obscure, seemingly inconsistent and contradictory, and not obvious in any way whatsoever. At this point, can I just ask the audience, am I stupid? The fact that I don't understand what the hell she's on about? Because seriously, I watched this numerous times before I started, and I didn't understand it then. I couldn't understand why every time I tried to listen to it, I kind of just lost focus and drifted off to something else inside my head. But now I think it's probably just because this is all incoherent, ill-defined gibberish. And if that's just me being dumb, and this is all incredibly clear somehow, I'm gonna be really annoyed. So leave a comment, you tell me.
That's a creation. The God gave us that ability to create. And therefore, of course, he gave that ability to an archangel, to Lucifer.
Of course. Why wouldn't he do that? Can't think of a single reason why the all-knowing God might decide not to do that.
And who actually created a sin. So therefore, that's when the chaos happened. In that moment when the sin was born in his heart, That's when the chaos began.
Chaos began when Lucifer sinned. So chaos is just sin or some physical product of sin? Is that seriously all we've been talking about this whole time? Okay, then I don't believe in chaos by that definition. And therefore I don't believe that it created the universe. I don't believe the universe was created by sin. It's not really an atheist thing.
So therefore, God is a god of order, and Lucifer is a god of chaos.
Well, no, he's an angel. Radically different level of power. God is literally infinity times more powerful, which means Lucifer does exactly what God wants. Lucifer is an agent of God, just like all the humans are, because if he wasn't, he wouldn't be there. And same thing for the humans. That's how everything works in a monotheistic universe. So this whole idea of God totally not liking the chaos is a bunch of crap.
And of course, the primary source of the sin, the creator of sin, was Lucifer, of course.
No, the entire concept of sin is God's creation, or at best you could say maybe a consequence of God's nature. Without God, sin is not a thing. God created Lucifer, he created the circumstances by which Lucifer would fall, knowing it would happen before it ever happened, whatever that exactly means, but I mean, Christians do believe there was a creation, so in some sense the universe did not exist at some point, even a timeless point of some sort. So in whatever sense there was some point at which the creation had not yet occurred, God already knew. When Lucifer didn't exist, the universe didn't exist, God knew what they would be doing. That's omniscience. God created a universe where these things had to happen. There was literally no alternative because that would be to violate God's foreknowledge, which is impossible. It's a contradiction, which means God did all of it. God created all of it. God is the creator. And I'm sorry, but the thing you said before about going against his will is also a contradiction. Because if you got the chance to do it at all, he willed it to be that way. Okay, I kind of did end up getting into the free will thing a bit. Oh well.
But the consequences led to the fall of mankind. Yeah, so that chaos spreaded like a disease to us.
Oh, and who made it work like that? That's a tricky one. Anyway, now she kind of wanders off onto a different topic, and I don't find it very interesting, so I'm gonna go question my sanity. Apparently that was supposed to prove that Genesis 1 verse 1 proves God exists, but a lot of it seemed not very related to Genesis 1:1, but more about some highly, ambitious and dubious interpretations of Genesis 1:1, followed by a bunch of not very consistent nonsense. The entire project is doomed from the start when you assume that Genesis 1:1 is true to try to demonstrate the existence of God, since that requires you to beg the question. Anyhow, thank you for watching. Please do subscribe and like before you go. Enormous thanks to all of my supporters. If you like the channel, please do consider supporting. It's how I keep the lights on around here, and I'll see you next time.